what happens to the amygdala? Over time, when it's continually triggered, it starts to rewire your brain in other ways. And how does it do that? Through something called the prefrontal cortex. If you put your hand, I can use this model, but I can also just use my hands. When you put your hand on your forehead, the area right behind your forehead, right here, is the prefrontal cortex. This is a very important thing for our conversation, this area of the brain. And what the prefrontal cortex does is it governs executive functions. So impulse control, memory, planning, organization, strategic thinking, complex problem solving. And there is a tension between your amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. When your amygdala is in the driver's seat, that prefrontal cortex is quiet. And what is happening as we continue to engage with our devices and have this primal urge to scroll, that amygdala upregulates and the prefrontal cortex downregulates. And over time, that is very problematic for all of the reasons that we're kind of introducing at the start of this conversation.
There was a meta-analysis done in 2025 of 71 different studies, and it found that heavy short-form video use was associated with reduced thinking ability, especially shorter attention spans and weaker impulse control.
That's right. These studies are just beginning to roll in now. Kids have been on social media really a lot since 2008, but especially once they got smartphones around 2012. Studies began coming in the 2010s that, it's looking like the kids who are spending a lot of time on this are doing much worse. They're more depressed. The focus was on depression. And some other researchers said, no, it's just a correlation. You can't prove causation. And we've been going around on this for about 10 or 15 years. Now we're doing the same thing with the short form videos. The damage everyone can see. My students tell me this is what's happening. We feel it. Studies are coming in. But there will be a few studies here and there that don't show it, and people will push that up. Meta spends a lot of time and money to influence the public debate. A lot of public documents are coming out now about how they do that. So we can engage in debate over research on short-form videos for 5 or 10 years, but at that point, it's way too late, and we've lost a second generation, Gen Alpha. So I think when we're talking about kids especially, we need to have what's called the precautionary principle, which is if there's reason to think that this is hurting kids, how about we don't roll it out into every childhood? How about we make these companies responsible? We hold them responsible for what they're doing to kids, because we're about to make the same mistake we made with social media, letting it worm its way into childhood. We've already done that with short videos, and we're about to do it with AI chatbots. In fact, we're just beginning it in late 2025, I'd say.
I don't think people quite realize how much these major social media platforms have figured out that short-form video sells. We're actually seeing this sort of global rise in short-form drama apps now. And I don't know if you guys have seen these apps, but it basically takes a movie that used to be 2 hours long, and it breaks it down into, say, 60 different parts. And a colleague of mine at my company was showing me the other day, in different parts of the world, they're exploding. There's been a 190% increase in short-form drama apps. It takes a long-form movie, turns it into short-form videos. Disney Plus plans to introduce AI-generated short-form videos this year, starting with 30-second limits inside the Disney Plus app. And TechCrunch also reported that as of October 2025, Netflix tested short-form video content on phones and recently announced its plan to expand this feature. It appears that all of the content we consume is going that way. And listen, I'm friends with lots of people at big social media platforms. This doesn't stand in my way of criticizing them, because I think two things can be true at the same time, right? So I think it can be true that I have a podcast and I make short-form videos, and that I also understand that there's a real downside to them. And all of the major social media platforms that I speak to have a huge drive towards short-form video. It appears to be their number one strategic priority. And obviously, because of the success of TikTok, as of January 2026, TikTok, I believe, is the most downloaded social app in the world now. And if I'm running a social media company and my one focus is profit, I'm now faced with an existential crisis.
Yeah.
I either take part in this thing that is driving the highest retention, therefore the best ad payouts, or I die.
So there's two comments to that. First off is that, when we think about social media and how society is shape-shifting to allow this short-form content, there is a concept that Jonathan and I briefly mentioned, I think prior to us filming, called second screen viewing. And so what's happening is that allegedly these big streamers are asking their creative talent, whether it's screenwriters or actors or directors, to replay, to reiterate the plot. Because as you're watching, when we were kids, we would watch TV or movies, and you just sit on the couch and you'd have a bucket of popcorn with your family and you'd watch a movie, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And now second screen viewing is happening, which means that you're watching a movie or a TV show and you're on your device. And so you are constantly having that fragmented attention, and we are all doing it. And so what these streamers are allegedly asking their creative talent to do is to reiterate the plot. So it's shape-shifting.
It makes sense. If my brain is, I'm 33 years old, so I've grown up with a lot of this stuff. If my brain has been wired to have shorter attention spans, and movies from 30 years ago are not going to cut it for me.
Right, but then look what happens if everybody chases that. And I know, look, Netflix is making shorter and shorter stuff. Even the TED conference, TED Talks are getting shorter and shorter. What does that do? It just repeats the cycle. Now, I appreciate that you're in a collective action trap. As you put it, if I don't do it and everyone else is, then I lose out. And so the business pressure on all the creators, the business pressures go shorter, shorter, shorter. There's a very useful psychological distinction here that I think would be helpful, which is the difference between psychological assimilation and accommodation. This goes back to Jean Piaget, the great developmental psychologist. We have certain mental structures. We have a model in our head of how things work. And, then you learn something new. Then, kid learns, that's an aardvark. Okay, I put that into, that's just, you just assimilate. They learn lots of animal names. And then they learn something that doesn't fit, like you learn about bacteria. And now you have to, now you have to change your mental structure. It takes a little time. You change your mental structure to understand more about life. That's what education really is all about. You have to have a lot of assimilation, of course, but you need that accommodation over and over again. That's why you want to go to college. That's why you want to read novels. That's what a great movie does. It takes time. And so one of the great things about this modern technology is that we can do things like have this 3-hour conversation. I can't believe it. People are going to listen to it. So this, long form content, this is all about accommodation. Anybody who walks out, who leaves this conversation after 3 hours and isn't thinking about something differently, we failed. Okay? So you are very much in the accommodation business. That's great. And then the question, both a moral and a strategic question, is how much do you need to play the quick hit game in order to get people there? I leave that to you to do the moral calculation. Maybe it balances out, but I think that's where you are.